electric opens up the door for a lot of technology disruption. Bangalore today has probably more EV startups, I would wager, than anywhere else in Asia. Today, Ather is the largest e-two-wheeler manufacturer and seller in all of South India put together. So we approached the entire sector very fundamentally. So the origin of all of this is Swapnil and I were trying to build an energy company right in our college years, like second year of college, we were calling ourselves Ather Energy. So the idea that we will build something together, a physical product, and in the energy space is really an ancient idea for us. We were trying a lot of things, and one of those things happened to be a battery pack. Initially, we were like, maybe we'll build these battery pack for other electric vehicles. And then to just figure out what that industry is like, we started researching a lot about it. We started meeting OEMs, we started meeting customers. And the core insight for us was a very fundamental approach, which is, as an engineer, we saw literally nothing that was holding electric back. There are a lot of industries where you look at something and you go, well, once something like this is invented, if a discovery like this happens, then maybe all of this will come together. But in the case of EV, whether it was lithium-ion batteries at that point, or it was the motor technology, battery management system, everything was there. Nothing needed a new invention. Yes, costs were high, but they were just high because there was not enough scale behind them. They were just high because they hadn't been engineered well enough yet. But the point of invention was already behind us. So in a very fundamental way, as an engineer, we saw nothing that would get in the way of electric, which is why for us it was obvious that electric is the future and we should just be building for that future. Very quickly, once we got into it, we realized that we can't just be building battery packs, we've got to actually build the entire vehicle. And the simple reason for that is because we couldn't find a single OEM who was willing to build an EV to whom we could sell our batteries. So if we can't find a customer in an OEM, we figured we'll just go to the end consumer and build the final product for them. And that's how Ather became a vehicle company. Actually, belief was not in short supply because we were a little bit of a not the regular startup story. Ours was a very, very different approach. So we started in a lab in IIT Madras. We were literally working out of that lab for about 10 months. And we hadn't even started up the company. So we'd spent 10 months doing nothing but reading everything about batteries, reading everything about this technology, getting our hands dirty, and having a lot of time walking in the campus and philosophizing. End result, belief and conviction was in abundant supply for us by the time we actually started Ather. I would say the biggest challenge early on was always capital. Ather began in a capital-starved environment. Building hardware in India, building vehicles in India and making it big had never happened before. The last automotive IPO was Maruti Suzuki's IPO. The last automotive startup was Reva, and despite the prowess of Chetan, that couldn't really survive independently. So really we had not a single example to look forward to in India. So it was a very hard journey. We had to fight for years until we built a business large enough to attract private equity capital. So I would say capital was probably one of the hardest challenges in the early years. Two-wheelers is one of those industries where India is not just good enough, India is actually the most important market anywhere in the world. We are the largest manufacturers of two-wheelers even today on the petrol side. We have probably the most demanding customers anywhere in the world. We have an extremely robust supply chain. Going anywhere else would actually be doing a disservice to ourselves. In fact, I would argue two-wheelers is probably the single industry where India is the most advanced economy today. So building a two-wheeler EV business, it was a no-brainer. We had to start here. We had to start where the ecosystem was the largest, where the supply chain was the most evolved, where the customers were just not the largest base within which they were, but also hands down the toughest customer to crack. We crack in this combination with all the supporting elements, we would have the starting seeds of what can be a phenomenal global business. Going anywhere else would actually be doing a disservice to us. Actually, the biggest gap was that nobody was looking at this business the right way. While all the advantages I talked about the two-wheeler industry, the single largest gap was that every single Indian two-wheeler business practically had started as a joint venture with typically a Japanese counterpart. Think of it, Hero Honda, TVS Suzuki, Kawasaki Bajaj, fantastic businesses, but all of them started as the JV partner of an international player, and hence the DNA of most Indian two-wheeler businesses was not down to product in back in the day, like 10 years ago. What we found were two opportunities. One, electric opens up the door for a lot of technology disruption, which means if we over-invest in technology, if we over-invest in R&D, and here is an opportunity where we can actually outspend massive businesses with 1, 2, 3 lakh crore market cap, we can genuinely outspend them on R&D, given just the sheer gap that existed in the market. We could outspend them as a tiny puny startup. That was the first big opportunity we realized. Like, this technology disruption means everybody starting from zero, and Ather could just be ahead of the curve right from day one. And the second thing was around product. We realized that none of the two-wheeler, well, I wouldn't say none, but most scooter businesses were not trying to build the reputation of being a product company. A company where consumers know that this is the brand where you go to buy great products, really thought through experiences, phenomenal ecosystems, very much like Apple. That opened up the door for us that let's over invest in R&D, let's make that our single largest investment, the only investment for the first 5, 6, 7 years, and let's build the reputation of a strong product brand, strong product company. And those are the ways we can differentiate and really break in. The simple challenge is that there were no suppliers. See, there were suppliers for lights, brakes, plastics, frames, suspensions, all the good stuff, wheels, tires, rims, and a phenomenal lot of them. But everything EV, whether it is battery packs or chargers or BMS or touchscreen displays, they just didn't exist. There were no suppliers in the first phase. Secondly, it was a idea when we started Ather, and now it's become a strong thesis that we have, that in any industry which is undergoing massive technology disruption, the dynamic is going to be that the OEM will control most pieces in the early years. And it's a very simple, it's a very simple flow chart here. The customer, the company closest to the customer is the one who will have the best understanding of what customers want, which is the OEM in this case. Suppliers are at least one step, maybe 2 steps removed in many cases. So OEMs will understand first that this is the actual use case of customers. This is how they charge their vehicles every day. This is how they use their handles. This is the kind of storage space they need. This is the kind of range they want. This is the kind of power delivery curve that they expect. Your typical supplier does not know that. In ICE industry, that understanding has been built over 30, 40, 50, 100 years, passed on from the OEM to the supplier, who've understood it slowly over years and decades, and then institutionalized it as a learning within their system, and now they just spam out a lot of products with that deep understanding built over generations. But in electric, they don't have this understanding. So if you're going to be waiting for suppliers to crack the right architecture, the right component design for you, you're probably going to be waiting a very, very, very long time. The right approach is to take charge of technology, take charge of architectures, define everything yourselves as an OEM in the early years, use suppliers to scale up manufacturing, use suppliers to get the right quality. Do not depend on them in the early years to define the architecture for you. And that was a very critical difference between us and many other players in the early years. Ather chose the path of defining and then using suppliers to scale. Most others were waiting for suppliers to bring the right tech to them, which meant they were waiting longer than us, which is why Ather was able to stay ahead of the technology curve for many, many years, and something that we continue to do even today. Oh, yeah, lots of moments. I think every moment you feel like you're manufacturing at scale, 1 year later another moment will come which will surprise you and make you laugh about what you thought was scale was nothing. I remember there was a time when we had 300 scooters sitting in a parking lot ready to be dispatched, and I thought finally we are here, we are scale. Then obviously it was not. Then came a point when we started doing 200 vehicles production every day. Yeah, something like 150 vehicles production every day. And we set up this new plant, and I distinctly remember walking to the first floor of this plant and looking at the entire plant in one view and thinking that now finally we have automotive grade scale. Today we are doing about 1,000 vehicles a day, and I think we are doing automotive scale, and I'm pretty sure 2 years from now when the next plant comes up and that'll do 3,000 vehicles a day, I'll revisit this entire thing. Our industry just has enormous scale behind it, so it would be stupid of me to now say that I have really seen scale. I think every year brings a different scale perspective, which just amazes us. See, the intent here is not IP. The end goal here is not IP. IP is coincidental. There is a mental model that if you're doing all this work, you will generate a certain amount of patents. Ather has a 450 odd patent portfolio, and we are growing that at the rate of 60, 80 patents every quarter. But that is still an outcome of the direction that we are pursuing. We believe that electric and connected vehicles have opened up a massive opportunity for new architectures, new platforms, and new experiences, more importantly. And hence, IP creation just automatically happens. If Ather wants to differentiate itself, if we want to differentiate ourselves by riding this new technology wave, every year brings about tons of new things that we can do that were never happening before. Our industry can do that were never happening before. End result, you are automatically going to create a lot of IP. But we worked hard to ensure that we don't build products that are tech that we were not forced to build products that we filed patents for. We worked hard to create a culture where we define the product first, and then everybody rallies around it to build the right tech, the right platforms, the right components for that end product in mind. So it's product first, tech later. I think one decision that I'll give my co-founder a lot of credit for is having the foresight in our early years when we were still, frankly, just maybe 100 to maybe just about 100 young out of college engineers to understand that the key gap in going from prototype to production is manufacturing engineering. See, manufacturing is a process that will happen on its own with discipline. But how to convert that concept into scalable, into repeatable production requires you to build a very different kind of engineering team, which is not design, but it's manufacturing engineering. I even remember we came up with a rule of thumb that for every X number of engineers hired, we have to hire one manufacturing engineer. And that's a ratio that we followed, I think, to date. And I think that single-handedly has played one of the biggest, possibly the biggest role in helping us scale the right way, in preparing us for good quality outcome every single time. India is today hands down the most evolved ecosystem anywhere in the world for light electric vehicles, which is electric 2 and 3 wheelers. There is not a single ecosystem more evolved than ours, and this is down to first with 2 wheelers us just being the largest, also with 3 wheelers us being the largest, and also starting with companies like ourselves and now our many peers. We're just plonking down the highest investment every year and the highest number of people every year to do the R&D for electric vehicles, light electric vehicles. Like how China is one of the global centers for electric cars today, I believe India has today become the global epicenter for electric 2 wheelers and 3 wheelers. Policies played a big role in enabling this. Great subsidies at the start. They've come down over the years, but there's still a tax arbitrage that has allowed startups like ourselves to come and build a business without running out of money very quickly, because there were subsidies to support the initial cost arbitrage, cost delta. And talent has responded really well. We've been able to create some fantastic talent over the years. Honestly, India had very good seeds of it with our software and our electronics depth in places like Bangalore, Chennai, Pune, Hyderabad, Gurgaon, everywhere. And that's been put to good use. Bangalore today has probably more EV startups, I would wager, than anywhere else in Asia. It's funny. I think, looking at my own experience, most hardware founders underestimate the hardware. And the mistake there is that we make this prototype and we think that's hardware. So, ye to ho gaya. Now we just have to figure out how to get this in front of everybody and build like $1 billion business. The point of building a scaled business in hardware is not one or two or three pieces, is figuring out the processes and the discipline and creating a supplier ecosystem around it and teaching all of them how to build that thing every day and keeping it all together without running out of capital, without running into working capital issues, without running into timeline issues. Your testing can't take too long. You can't have too many warranty issues. They can kill you. This is a business that survives on 20-30% gross margin and not 80-90% gross margin like software. So the risk tolerance, the tolerance to errors is really low. And I think that's something that most hardware founders really struggle with in the early years. If I were to simplify it, I would just say understanding of quality. That one product is not quality. What consumers will need is a quality bar that's often 1,000 times higher, and scaling that requires us to learn a lot about production, a lot about design, a lot about testing, a lot about just basics of quality systems. So, and all of that is hardware still. Oh no, as I said, I think for 2 and 3 wheelers, India defines what's going to happen in the world. Today, if you want to be a supplier to electric 2-wheelers globally, you have to first come to India and learn from where our market has already gotten to. I distinctly remember being in a conversation where this global supplier was pitching display solutions for 2-wheelers. And we had to point out at the start of the meeting or somewhere in the middle that, listen, like, you're talking about display, we already have touch integrated, we already have 4G SIMs, we already have Bluetooth integrated, it all works, it's all already connected, and it's already proven on a working 2-wheeler in India. And today those suppliers have now moved their R&Ds to India to really play sort of catch up. I think we had a fantastic play. And I think it's not a stretch to say that India has a phenomenal shot at not just being a meaningful player, but absolutely dominating electric 2-wheelers sales globally. I would say the only thing that we really got to learn is how to take a leadership mindset, how to, for example, set standards for the rest of the world instead of waiting for somebody else to set standards for us. But I think we had a fantastic place for global domination in this industry. Today, and I think the definition of what is premium and what our consumers want is changing quite rapidly. I'll give you one statistic. In our industry, 125cc scooters were considered as the premium category. 5-6 years ago, about 18-20% of the entire scooter industry were these premium vehicles, 125cc and above. By FY24, just under 50% of the entire market had become premium by definition. My guess is either this year or by next year, the majority of our market would become premium industry. At which point you'll have to stop and wonder, are you defining premium correctly, or has the entire market migrated up? With a rising per capita income, the most fundamental truths to bet on is that the Indian customer is getting richer, and hence the market is migrating up, it is upgrading. That's what we've been trying to do at Ather. We're trying to sell to this upgrading Indian customer. And I think that's working out quite well. Today, Ather is the largest e-2-wheeler manufacturer and seller in all of South India put together. Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana put together. In fact, month of July, Ather was also the largest e-2-wheeler player in the state of Gujarat. And that's while the market continues to think that Ather is a very premium player. Yes, we are a premium player, but I think what the market hasn't fully understood, and that's true about most Indian consumer segments, that the Indian consumer has been migrating up quietly and at a very furious pace. I would say if that is the only fundamental truth in our market, please run where the ball will be and not where the ball was, right? And when the ball clearly is headed right up with, for more upgrade worthy products. I think a very fundamental thing that always seems to play out is that hardware can provide a very significant differentiation in the okay, let me not try and give a generic answer there. Let me just describe what I see as having played out at Ather. In our case, the specifications, the specs, the top speed, acceleration, those were the big disruption when we first started Ather. The biggest differentiation of Ather was that we were trying to build a vehicle that will go 80, 90 kilometers per hour, that will have a range of like 70, 80, 90 kilometers at that point, that will have fast charging capability of 3, 4 kilowatts. Nobody had worked at even 1/3 or 1/4 of that level. So the specification was the big disruption, which is generally a lot of that is hardware led. Then after a while, it is the quality of your hardware that starts differentiating, which is the place where, for example, iPhone was for many years, where yes, everybody else also has touch, everybody else also has this motor, everybody else also has this, but the quality of your experience is superior. It does not catch fire, it does not need as much servicing, so buy this brand because it has better quality. However, what starts happening after that is that as people start catching up on the quality of your hardware, it is the deeper software integration, especially the firmware and the algorithm layers, which starts really providing a lot of differentiation, which is the phase we feel brands like iPhone today are and brands like us probably are walking into, where the nature of your experiences are down to your software investments and your work in software. And that's not just the top layer, it's not just apps, it's not just what you see on the screen, it's the software that powers your hardware, which is very, very, very different. So I think that's how often a lot of industries go. They start with specs and then hardware quality, and then eventually software and software powered experiences. And I guess that might be true for many other industries too. I think India has been serious about manufacturing for a while now. In fact, now I just think of the Make in India campaign and the PR behind it for many years. I feel that in fact now the time has come to go beyond just manufacturing and look at not just Make in India but designed in India. But frankly, Make in India and manufacturing, there's been a big focus. If you look at the state level, just the amount of competition between states, I think just this fundamental assumption that new industries and new manufacturing is very valuable has seeped in beyond corporate India into political India and now bureaucracy of India. So all the layers together understand that manufacturing can be a great engine for creating jobs, for bringing wealth and upgrading the quality of life for our population. So I feel it's been true for a while, which is why starting new manufacturing, especially in sunrise sectors like ourselves, is, well, by no stretch a walk in the park, but it's infinitely more easier than it was maybe 10, 20 years ago. I would say it's a mindset, and that's the leap I wanted to talk about even in the previous part. While manufacturing is great, I think it's very crucial to understand that the manufacturing ecosystem only comes around places where product development happens. You need a culture of being able to build products and technologies from scratch, because the way this value chain flows, the way this entire thing flows is where engineers will design something, that's typically where that's typically where manufacturing engineering will come around, because the design engineers are there. So where design engineering and branding happens, manufacturing engineering will come around them to convert those designs into manufacturable components. Where manufacturing engineering will be, suppliers will come around them to quickly have speed and respond to changes and to be able to build those components around the key OEM. And where suppliers have come and OEMs have come, manufacturing will often always stay there. It's very hard to not do the first step, which is design and design engineering, and hope that manufacturing somehow comes to us. Because manufacturing will always keep trying to gravitate towards the place where, well, suppliers are, and suppliers will try and go towards where OEMs are, and OEMs will try and be close to where their design teams are. In fact, even for us, it's so hard to set up even a testing center away from where the R&D is. Like even a 2-hour drive becomes impossible to justify. So you have to keep even the testing centers close to where the design is. And the manufacturing wants to be close to the testing centers, and the suppliers want to be close to our manufacturing, and their suppliers want to be close to them. It's everything sort of starts where design is. So as a country, I think we have to really believe and invest not just in manufacturing, but create a culture, invest in creating a culture of being confident that we can design things here. Absolutely not. Like, it's totally not only doable, it is happening as we speak. Motors are being made in India. BMS is, in fact, the first thing that we built at Ather was the battery management system. One of the first things we built at Ather was the dam charger. The battery pack was built by Ather, and so by our many peers in our industry. We need to get rid of this mindset that technology तो कोई और ही समझ सकता है, हम थोड़ी इतना complex चीज़ कर सकते हैं. Obviously go look outside. Whether it is standards, whether it is designs, whether it is IP, we have to have the conviction that we can create all of that in India, because we've got fantastic talent bases. And I think now that we've been running Ather for 11-12 years, we've seen many companies come up with the same amount of confidence and conviction. So I believe we're on a great path now. Take Cardi very seriously. I think that's where I don't mean until you have a high quality product, don't start. Obviously, you have to start off with a prototype, but please understand the key difference in taking that to production and key difference in building a brand behind it is quality. So 2019, we had launched our first product, we had gone into manufacturing, and lo and behold, the cost of that vehicle came 3 times higher than we anticipated. It was a complete shipwreck. Everything was, it was like a shit show in office. We were all like the most disappointed people ever. And for almost the period of that 1 year, gradually we kept gravitating towards a viewpoint that maybe the idea of trying to build a vehicle was a mistake. Maybe we can do good designs, maybe we can do cool tech, maybe we can't figure out how to do this at the right cost structure. That's a game reserved for higher level players, not us. So there was a point when we actually tried pitching this entire idea of maybe we should just become licensors and give this tech to other better manufacturers to figure out how to move this to production. It was probably one of the most depressing years for me and many others at Ather, because it was accepting defeat on a very fundamental promise of how we had begun. Eventually, what kept us going is we tried selling this idea to other OEMs, and when we met them and when we pitched them, we realized that nobody actually has the same conviction as us, and they will not be able to lower cost either. So it's a little bit of a binary situation. Either we have the courage to see this through and we stick with it, or nothing will happen. This dies here. And as funny as it sounds, that kind of an extreme binary viewpoint gave us a lot of clarity, because then the only answer available to us was to say, then to karna hi padega, then to we have to make this shit happen. So we set a new target. We set a target, I remember, which was 50% cost reduction in one year, 1.5 years. And 1.5 years later, teams met the target, and Ather became gross margin profitable. Not 5 years ago, but maybe almost 8-9 years ago, when we had just started Ather, or maybe even 10 years ago when we just started Ather, for a while I had a fair bit of conviction that the future is going to be removable and swappable batteries in vehicles, and there was a very high conviction on that strand, on that direction for a while. But fast forward to now, we've come to a conclusion that removable architectures are not good for the Indian consumer, not for the consumer market, though it still seems to be useful for the B2B and the delivery markets. That was a massive pivot and a massive architectural change for us, but something we did very much in early years. Well, obviously the world is very different. What never changes in a startup is you've got to have a key point of differentiation from the industry. In 2025, the industry already believes the future is electric. That's no longer disruptive. The industry already believes that you can build electric vehicles that are better than petrol vehicles. So building powerful and premium vehicles is no longer disruptive. The industry already believes that scooters are going to be going electric, so building electric scooters is no longer disruptive. I would try and just change the scooter form factor completely. I would take a stab at changing the underlying two-wheeler architecture completely. I would basically go all the way down to the roots of how people ride two-wheelers, change something very fundamental at that level. I think there is an opportunity there because, and the only reason I see there is an opportunity there is because none of us today are challenging that. It's taken for granted. This is how you ride a two-wheeler. I think attacking a problem which nobody else is attacking is generally a great place to start. Any direction where others are already doing the same thing is very dangerous as a young startup.